So can you be rich not at the expense of your character?
Someone just may have a goal. That might not take into consideration people.
It seems like it's necessary in the world of business, but it can also be destructive.
There's this desire to prove themselves.
Is it value creation at the expense of someone else?
When did business become you can f someone over?
But also at the same time, there's poor people that are a-holes.
I turn to my wife, I'm like, what's wrong with them? She's like, what's wrong with you?
Why are rich people a-holes?
Why are rich people a-holes? Well, a lot of times what gets people to get rich is this desire to prove themselves. Like I read this story that Steve Harvey sends a teacher a TV every single year because that teacher told him you'd never be good enough to be on TV.
Oh,
I'm like, what a dick. That is just a dick move. It's like he's wearing as a chip on his shoulder. It's a bitterness. And it's like, I'm going to prove someone wrong and I don't care what it takes, whatever I got to do to get there. And sometimes that people lose humanity in that. Because then it's about, hey, look at me. And they're trying to fill this void, right? There's just like this void here. They're just like, they're trying to throw money into it all the time. And they think, money's going to prove like, hey, I'm successful. I've got it. But there's no amount of money that will fill the void if they feel bitterness and anger, if they feel frustration, if they feel lack, if they feel scarcity. See, because the thing is, scarcity, people might take two paths with it. One might be inaction because they're just like, hey, there's nothing I can do. There isn't enough. I don't know what, and then others are like, there's not that much. I'm going to be so damn competitive. I'll do whatever it takes. And, there's a cool attitude to whatever it takes in some ways.
Yeah.
And then there's really this terrible attitude with it. Being resourceful is a do whatever it takes attitude. Hey, I'm going to figure it out. Asking more questions, getting support, studying, like diving in. But then there's I don't care who I hurt along the way. There's this notion. This is one of my least favorite sayings ever. They say, hey, it's not personal. How do we finish that?
It's business. It's
business. And that's what someone says right before they screw you over. And it's going to feel so personal right in your business.
Or after they just screwed you over and they're like,
right,
man,
it's not personal, it's business. Like, when did business become you can f someone over? Why was that the notion?
Yeah.
See, I think exchange is what creates wealth. And when we exchange in a way that's through service, through solving problems, through adding value, that's a game changer. That's helpful, right? Because some wealthy people are some of the most generous people that you ever meet.
Yeah.
Now, other times people just peg them as a-holes when they're not. Because sometimes you just have to protect your time.
Gotcha.
Because people have an insatiable appetite of like, take what they can, get what they can. And they might try to use someone. And in the process, if there isn't boundaries, that person doesn't become wealthy.
Gotcha. So you're saying sometimes the perception of boundaries could be perceived as being an a-hole.
Right. Sometimes people don't get wealthy because they don't know how to say no. They're always a yes, but saying yes to some things means a no to the bigger things.
Yeah.
Because now they don't have the energy, right? Now they don't have the time. Now what they find themselves is disconnected, exhausted. And there's this book, Give and Take by Adam Grant, that I love because it talks about there's givers and takers. And it says the takers are actually in the middle. And there's givers on the top and givers on the bottom. And what's the difference between the top and the bottom is the bottom, they're just saying yes to everyone all the time. And they don't have anything left over. There's more selective with the givers at the top.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like, it's almost the same driving factor can make you either rich or poor.
Right. And here's the thing. Someone just may have a goal. And if they're, again, do whatever it takes, right? Do whatever it takes to get to that goal. That might not take into consideration people. And it might not take into consideration their feelings. It might not take into consideration their life. Like, here's something that we've talked about before. But if you're a publicly traded company, right? You have one responsibility. It's to your shareholders.
Yeah.
Right? That means you don't have the same level of fiduciary responsibility to your employees or to your customers.
So that in itself can push you to be...
Yeah, it's like it could push where maybe there's not enough consideration.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you just completely neglect employees and customers, people are probably going to leave or they're not going to do business with you. But, there is a certain amount of attention that can go strictly to shareholders. And so I think we have to look at like perception here, because just because someone believes, oh, that person's rich, they're a bad person, sometimes it's because they have this viewpoint that comes from scarcity. And I think that there's two viewpoints that we can look at: scarcity and abundance. Okay. Mm-hmm. So on scarcity, profit, they might say, oh, that's evidence of deception. That's evidence of coercion. Right? Abundance says that's evidence of value creation. It's a perspective. So one person sees it as a negative, the other one sees it as a positive, and neither might be true in the moment. I mean, I think that more people get wealthy because of value creation than deception and coercion.
Is it value creation at the expense of someone else?
So in scarcity, if it's deception and coercion, it's people actually taking. They might lie to get money. They might manipulate to take from someone. They might overpromise. They might overmarket without the delivery. They might not care about customer service. You know, it could be scams. It could be, you know, Ponzi's. It could be stuff like that. That's deception and coercion. It's just value extraction, where abundance is value creation. I'm serving someone. I'm solving problems. I'm adding value. So that's a place of let's all get wealthier together. But sometimes when people are in scarcity, they believe there's only so much to go around. Yeah. And so they think if one person takes a slice of the pie, that's less pie for everybody else here, right? And so in abundance, we're like, okay, maybe there's not a finite pie. Maybe the pie can expand. And the expansion comes through value creation. And when one person creates value for another, they then might learn something more. They might be able to do something more. It might increase their skill sets. And all of a sudden, we have more value that comes into the world. And we've seen that happen over time. There's just more wealth now than there ever has been before. But there's a lot of people that just point out that the rich get richer and the 1% have most of the money and everybody else has kind of got the table scraps. And a lot of that comes from a mindset that thinks there's only so much to go around. Take what you can. Like, because in abundance, you think about collaboration. Right? And in scarcity, you think about competition. You know, and in competition, it's like, how do I kill my competition? How do I put them out of business? And so in deception and coercion, it might be lie about your competitors. You know, speak negatively about them. Where in collaboration might be, how do I uplift the entire industry? How do we learn from each other? And we create study groups, or that we see best practices. It's a completely different mindset. And so I think that sometimes there's the wealthy people get a bad rap. Right? People just, when we would put out ads and say, you know, we're trying to find out what the best title is, and we'd put in the word billionaire, and man, do people get upset. Like, billionaires shouldn't exist. They think they've taken too much and that should be redistributed. Well, if we redistribute, imagine that's like redistributing weights in a gym. Maybe some people can handle that level of weight, other people can't. And so now it's too light for one person, too heavy for another, and it's not actually getting lifted. And somehow we think that if we just redistribute wealth, that the government or that some organization can fairly distribute that. The problem is we all have different skills that we develop. We all have different levels of ambition. We all have different number of people that we might serve, or the level of impact that we might make. And if all of a sudden everyone's just thinking about, you know, minimizing, playing down to the level of competition, or only thinking about competition, or that if someone got ahead, they did it through doing something bad or wrong, or somehow taking more than their fair share. A lot of it is just misinformation about rich people.
So what's your perspective on competition? Because it seems like it's necessary in the world of business, but it can also be destructive.
Yeah, I think, you know, I wrote about this in Killing Sacred Cows. And I talked about co-opetition is what I called it. You know, and it was like, hey, you want to be competitive so that the bar raises and there's higher standards and we see what's possible. But if you could collaborate and cooperate, then you can actually do more. There are people that don't play well with others.
Yeah, what would be an example, like in your life, or someone that you've worked
All right,
with?
so I license What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Okay.
So here's a book that is a big book in the world of legacy and insurance. And a lot of advisors would buy it and hand it out. So I'm like, well, cool. Let's just turn it into a marketing system where now the QR codes lead to their website. We put a forward with them, and now they can actually generate more business because they're leveraging the content that I've created. That's a very collaborative effort. It might be looked at as like, but wait, they're your competition. Yeah, but all ships rise with the tide. Let's go ahead and uplift. We got 9 out of 10 people have poor insurance design. They haven't considered legacy. They have tax implications and issues. They've taken too much risk with some of their money. They've got problems that the policy won't actually be around because of the way it's being paid for. So it's like, hey, rather than just try to get all the business myself. It's like, why don't I just help other people out that share my values?
And the premise is there's no way that you could alone handle all the people who need.
Not at this point.
Yeah.
And so, there are just rich people that are assholes, just like there's certain athletes that are assholes. It's just like,
but also at the same time, there's poor people that are a-holes, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that's part of the thing is like, we can't just judge it based upon, hey, that person has a nice home, they're greedy. Hey, that person has a nice car, they did something wrong. Like it's so different for each person. So, what do they value? What's important to them? But I look at it, the majority of them are actually just creating massive value, and they're being paid for the value that they create.
You're kind of saying that money isn't actually what makes them that way. They were probably that way before or after.
Yeah, you probably heard Weston where money is like this magnifying glass, right? So you got this magnifying glass here, and it's shining down. And when, if someone's a good person and they're filled with value and they're collaborative, and all of a sudden they get a lot more money, what's going to happen is that'll increase what they do there.
Yeah.
If on the other hand, someone's super deceptive, they're coercive, they're an a-hole, and they get a lot more money, it'll increase them being an a-hole.
Yeah.
Because now they'll be more visible. Now they'll have more resources. Now they're more likely to have a platform to put people down or whatever it might be. Okay.
Who's someone that you know in your life that wealth amplified them being an unpleasant person? And what was the core behind that if it wasn't the money?
Okay. So what I saw was a big level of arrogance. And then they started to talk even more about themselves. Right. And they started to feel like their shit didn't stink because like they had money. And they just were really unpleasant to be around as they started getting to the $50 million revenue type of place. Because they just canceled things. They didn't care, because they were so egocentric and really became, we use the word narcissistic too much in today's society, but it felt that way. And the reason this happened is because they didn't heal a lot of their wounds. Right. And so what happens is now they feel more powerful. They get more attention and respect from other people. And so they get more people saying yes around them, and that feels really good to them. And then when someone may disagree or not, do what they want to do, like, dude, I think about in 2007 when I'm driving my Bentley, and I park at the Grand America, and they don't, valet it. They don't park it up front. I turn to my wife. I'm like, why the hell didn't they park me up front? What's wrong with them? She's like, what's wrong with you? I was being a dick because I was all caught up in like, oh, I've got this nice car and I should be treated differently because of it, because I hadn't healed certain wounds that I had inside. I didn't have like certain level of self-love, respect. I started to think more about myself, in a selfish way instead of in a self-interest that leads to service, and it was just because things happened to me as a kid that I hadn't dealt with, whether it was, thinking I was stupid in kindergarten because I couldn't memorize my address, or, whether it was getting hit by a car and seeing that when I wasn't perfect, I put my family in a place where they were concerned and worried, and, I didn't want to hurt them. And I could just think of all these little incidences that happened that shaped my beliefs. And I always thought if I had more money, it would fix it. And it would just take having more money, and then everything would be okay.
Well, let's dive into one. So you getting hit by the car, kind of go into that. Like how did that stick with you in your life? Hey, Future Weston here. I just took the Wealth Wounds test, and it explained why I personally over-optimize some money moves and avoid others. This tool that the team put together grew out of this conversation with Garrett, and it's for our viewers who want learning that sticks. Take just a few minutes and you'll uncover your leading money wound. Then get 3 personalized action steps plus a custom AI prompt to explore further. The link is in the pinned comments. Try it, give yourself permission to prosper, and come right back.
Yeah, so when I got hit by a car, my mom was talking to her friend Mary. She had a little rope tied around my Hot Wheels, and while she's talking to her, I'm like convincing my mom just to let me cross the street. Well, I don't look because there's like a parked car, so I don't see the car that's coming, so I go right out in time, and I get hit.
How old are you?
I was 3 years old, and I could remember a lot of. I was crying so hard that I ran to the woman that hit me, thinking it was my mom.
Oh.
There was at City Hall in East Carburn. There was a little convention where a bunch of cops were. One of them saw it, so he rushed out. He got my mom and me, put us in the front seat, and it was about 30 miles to the nearest hospital. And so he rushed us there. I'm crying. My mom's scared. I have blood that's going down my head. My dad shows up at the hospital in his full coal mining gear, coal mining dust all over his face. My grandparents show up, and I just realized, I'm like, man, everyone's worried about me.
Yeah.
If I'm not perfect, I cause pain.
Oh.
And so I was like, I've got to figure this out. Or another time when, I was really young and the mines were on strike and my dad's a coal miner, my mom's paying bills, and she said, man, we're just getting killed by insurance, all these insurance bills. And I just thought, man, they feel so stressed. I was like, if I could just make enough money, I can take care of everybody.
Yeah.
So it was like this level of ambition, that's helpful. Like, try to be as perfect as I can, which is stressful as hell, and then try to make as much money as I can so I could provide, which means that there's never enough.
Yeah.
So even though I might make more, there's more that needs to be made. And how can I help with, and I'm now buying a bunch of real estate and trying to get my parents a retirement portfolio with a bunch of real estate that I hated dealing with or doing, because everybody's like, oh, that's what you do to be wealthy, is own real estate, but it owned me. And a lot of it was just because I hadn't addressed some of these things that happened earlier in my life. And, I think that there was a time that I look at that I could definitely, at one time, of telling my wife, like, what's wrong with them? Like, what's wrong with you? Yelled at her because she spilled a soda in my Bentley. And she's like, man, I'm going to go tell your mom. I'm a grown ass man. There's like, no, don't tell my mom. Like it was definitely just, my mind wasn't ready. My mind wasn't mature enough. I hadn't gone through some of these experiences. I hadn't dealt with some of these earlier beliefs, and they were kind of part of the problem. And so how many times we hear an athlete that they put something on the wall that's like a newspaper clip to motivate them, and that bitterness leads them to get somewhere, but they're still not happy. They're still being led by anger and resentment and frustration. They're not enjoying the process along the way necessarily. And it might get them an award or an accolade, but it might also get them really high blood pressure. And it might mean that they're divorced for the 4th time, or that nothing's ever good enough. I mean, a lot of this is what happens. And people that get really successful have something that happened in their early life that developed that ambition.
So then now, as you worked through, the trauma that was associated with you getting hit as a kid, has it removed that ambition?
I'm still pretty ambitious. And
so what's different?
What's different is I recognize that, the value that money can bring and where it's limited.
Oh, okay.
Before, I just thought that it would solve it, that more was always better. And if I had enough acknowledgement externally, that I would feel at rest internally. And so it took this really understanding, like, I have to design a life that I get to have depth and harmony, not just more. Because my wife felt like a single mom during a lot of that time, as I'm missing out on memories with my kids. I'm just thinking yes is always the answer to something that makes more money, not designing my life, because I thought that more was going to fix the broken pieces. It took me going through somatic therapy. It took me, doing EFT, emotional freedom technique. It took me doing timeline therapy. It took me anchoring future emotions in the present versus letting past emotions sabotage the present. It's the work of how can I be more present? It's the work of writing down what it is that's important in my life, creating the structure and calendar that supports how to live my best life, and continue to be in the game of value creation. Because selling a business and doing comedy, I felt really fulfilled doing comedy until I didn't, because I realized, like, this wasn't the game I wanted to play. So how do I bring all of it together? And if we just let our past experiences or our past difficulties determine our future experiences, it's almost predictable that it's going to be one of limitation, bitterness, and fear, instead of abundance, collaboration, and creation. And so I really started to focus on, how do I design a life I don't want to retire from? How do I enjoy the process along the way? How do I fall in love with the work? How do I create the boundaries that says what's really important? It's important to me to see my parents every week. It's important to me to have gatherings with my in-laws and to have a close relationship with my sister-in-law. And it's like, how do I have these great relationships with the people that I know best? And it came down to, I had to do the personal work. So sometimes I just have to do writing and process the emotions. Yeah. Sometimes I have to meet with someone that's my, mentor, and talk through it and talk about what I'm creating and understand what lessons are yet unresolved or beliefs that are sabotaging my results or my success, because it comes down to, what is success? To me, success isn't getting somewhere alone. Like, that's no fun. You know, I want to celebrate it with people that I love. I want to celebrate it with the people that I work with. I want to be around the people that I love. And in order to really be abundant enough to acknowledge people, to grow people and invest in them, you've got to be at peace in yourself. You've got to be coming from a place of abundance. Otherwise, it's always competition and never collaboration. There's a level of distrust that everybody's always taking something from you, and therefore you push them away, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it comes down to, like, can you create from a blank slate? Can you come from that void where you go, what's possible without the limitations of past emotions sabotaging the success? If the past emotion is fear, doubt, worry, if the past emotion is one of, you know, lack and bitterness and anger, it's one of resentment, if it's one of like proving yourself to someone else, if it's guilt or shame, then what you're going to continually do is solve it temporarily and then have it rear its head in a bigger way. Because if you don't learn the lesson the first time around, it has to hit you harder the next time around until you go, oh wait, this isn't serving me any longer. It's now a sabotage. So it's really about, you got to dig internally. You've got to have some quiet time, and you got to start creating from that place of abundance versus scarcity.
Who's someone in your life that's an example of someone who's wealthy, that's abundant in their life or helping other people?
Yeah, today I just was with Reagan. It's his third immersion that we've done, and he's just an abundant person. He's always looking to connect me to people. He's always talking me up to other people. We always try to find ways to have fun together. We're always like, hey, how can I support you? And we acknowledge each other about what we're good at and, you know, uplift each other. But we're also, hey, have you thought about this? And we'd positively challenge each other if we thought that there was more potential that wasn't being tapped into. And, you know, we went to dinner last week. So there's so many people this way. Justin Donald with Lifestyle Investor. I mean, that dude is so abundant. He's constantly sending referrals. So I'm always looking to contribute to his community just because of the way he shows up. He teaches very abundantly. He's good at, you know, giving acknowledgement. There's another guy, Michael Scoville, I just talked to. And I was like, man, you know what Michael does? He sees people and he sees their potential. He helps show that to them so they can grow into it. And, you know, when I went to speaking to his place, he's like, oh, please stay at my house. And I want to introduce you to people. And it's like, I got to tell you, 9 out of 10 wealthy people have been amazing. It's like the exception to the rule that they're not. Yet most of the world that's not wealthy, that feels bitterness and anger because someone else is successful and they're not, they're more likely to project their own insecurities onto that wealthy person and look for evidence of why they think they're an a-hole. Yeah. Look for evidence of what they think is wrong or bad versus look at themselves. And they can continue to project that versus actually look at themselves. But if you're projecting on someone else, if you turn that inward and say, why do I feel this way and what am I not willing to acknowledge or take responsibility in my own life, then what you're going to find is if you are willing to look inward, you can get much better results. Yeah.
One of my friends that I knew through you, he was telling me that his family put aside $1,000 every month, and they would look for a family that they would meet either in the grocery store or through a connection or something, just like, hey, who could we help out? And it was cool. Like, that was pretty inspiring for me of like, man, I would love to get to that level where I could, you know, find where money can make impact in someone's, you know, some individual's life in a very simple way.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many good people out there. It's just you have to be willing to see it. People love to look for what's wrong. Look, that whole dude that, you know, was having an affair at a Coldplay concert.
Oh, yeah.
The world loved to take him down, man.
Yeah.
You know, wanted him to lose everything.
Yeah.
So two wrongs don't make a right, you know? Like, yeah, he was having an affair. He's doing it right there, but did he deserve to like have a scarlet letter for the rest of his life and have everything taken away from him and, you know, have this punitive punishment? Because, hey, when Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce, it wasn't the same. It's like, oh, a good album solves it all. We're cool with an entertainer doing it. We're just not cool with a business guy that's seen as wealthy doing it. And so I just find it very interesting that we have these like double standards. And again, I think a lot of it is it's easy to hate wealthy people. And here's the thing that people don't understand. When someone's really wealthy, they also could be going through stuff, but they don't feel okay to talk about it because people are like, well, like they're not supposed to have feelings. Like they're not supposed to, hey, what do you have to complain about? You have multiple houses, you got all the money, but it's like, hey, they still might have a difficult partnership that's not working out. They might be having a rift with their spouse that's being really taxing. They might have an issue going on with their kids. They might just have like stuff that's coming up from the past that they never dealt with and they don't know how to deal with. And so they just feel a level of like disconnection and loneliness. But often they won't talk about it because like, dude, who are you to have a pain? It's like everyone has pain. Everyone does. I don't care how great their life is. We all go through moments. Now, not everyone has suffering. That's kind of something that you choose into if you're in it for too long, because pain's kind of like inevitable, but suffering's optional. Not my quote, obviously, but I believe in that. And so if you're so busy judging everybody that's wealthy, I mean, look at the internet. It showed us how much anger there is.
Yeah.
Showed us how much resentment there is. There's so many people that are, judging the person that's playing the game from the cheap seats.
Well, and it's also who's the person who's most likely to be able to help you get out of your own plight. Talking with, someone like you, reading your books, or, any of the other wealthy people that I've met in my life, it's like they're the most likely to be able to provide knowledge that could help me get to a different spot.
Right.
But if I just sit there criticizing them, I'm removing that insight from my life.
Yeah, they might be resourceful. The problem is some people just want their resources.
Oh, interesting.
But if I'm talking to someone, they've got this mental capital. They've got these ideas, knowledge, wisdom, insight, strategies, tools. They've got relationship capital, people, networks, organizations, friends, family. And so if people are just looking for the financial capital, they're missing these things that are on the driver's side, which is it's our mental capital times our relationship capital that creates our financial capital. And so, you're missing out if you're just looking at someone's money.
Yeah.
Think about how did they create it? Who did they know? What did they see differently? I'm in my immersion today. We're talking about legacy stuff.
Yeah.
And we're working on family constitution, and Reagan was saying, hey, it's really important to have mentors. This is something he wants to let his kids and grandkids know. He's like, you want to learn from people. He's like, I created a protocol that didn't exist in health because I researched. So what could you get obsessed about that shows big ways to create value that's interesting to you? And so it was like this entire instruction manual. And so he's someone that is so abundant and so likable and very wealthy. Again, more people are likable and wealthy if you just sat down with them than the few people that are these extreme personalities that are kind of dicks that maybe they throw and flaunt their money. They love money and use people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like love people and use money. That's the better format.
Yeah. You're right. Most people are demanding the resource from the wealthy person instead of learning the demonstrated resourcefulness.
Yep. Love people, use money, not the other way around. Tap into people's resourcefulness. Don't try to take their resources. And so I look at it this way. When I meet a relationship, I want to make deposits in that relationship. So I was in the meeting. I connected Reagan to two people. One, I called this guy Sean. I'm like, hey, you run this thing called X-Room. I think Reagan would be great. He'd be a great speaker. And he does so good with health. You should probably have him. He's like, dude, I do want to get my blood work looked at. Reagan, that'd be great. He's like, and man, when Garrett gives me referrals, they're always amazing. So I'm all in. Like, that's what reputation can do, is you could just connect great people together. And I don't necessarily get paid on all that, but I do have all these deposits into relationship capital because I'm always looking to make those deposits. Some people try to take a withdrawal before they make a deposit.
Yeah.
And if you start to withdraw from a bank before you made a deposit, well, it bounces, right? And you're going to end up losing your account. It goes to overdraft. So be the type of person that's a value creator. Value creators, they might see people that are a-holes, but they're not going to just determine their whole life as taking that a-hole down or telling everyone what an a-hole that is. That's kind of like gossip.
Yeah.
Gossip is getting other people to believe the same thing you believe about someone without ever talking to that someone, and so it's a big waste of time.
Yeah.
It destroys someone and decimates someone's reputation. What if you take that time and you invest in someone? You invest time, you invest money, you just, you grow with them. Like when I'm around good people, I have better conversations, and conversations are what lead to wealth. Committed ones anyway. Like anytime you see something, we're sitting in this room, that it began with a conversation. Hey, Weston, I think we should put a studio in here. Yeah. There was a conversation. So we have to look at what words we're using. Are we using words that are, leading to inspiration, uplift, and growth? Are we using words that are decimating someone's character and destroying their ability to have anyone see them as being anything other than a dick? Yeah. And so I think that's, you look at Elon, there's just like this polarizing structure. Some people like Elon is one of the biggest visionaries that we've ever seen on the planet, a multi-billionaire because of what he's brought. And then other people are like, no, he's a fraud. He's a phony. He's not smart. He's not a genius. And like,
he's never
I hate
achieved
him.
anything.
Why? Because you disagree with certain things. You might not share the same values or whatever it is. We can always find fault in people because that's human nature.
Yeah.
Like, I've made mistakes. I go back to when I started in the financial world and I set up a hard money lending fund and it didn't do very well. That was sucked. And I think back to those people that knew me 25 years ago versus someone that knows me today. I'm infinitely more valuable in what I could provide. I've really worked on building a good reputation by being a value creator. But if I was still judged by things I did 25 years ago, man, I was a novice, I was a rookie, and it wasn't good for people, the things that I recommended, because I just didn't know any better. Maybe if you think everyone wealthy is an a-hole, maybe you're the a-hole. Maybe take a look.